What is going on, Summit Chasers? Adrian always laughs because when we first started doing a lot of content and I had our podcast, every time I would introduce myself or I'd come on, I'd be like, "What's going on?" Someone do that weird thing with my hands. So I'm trying to bring it back, and I can see her in the backstage right now, shaking her head like I don't want to share the spotlight with this idiot right now. But too bad, so sad. Here we are. Welcome to another Founders Focus with us on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. And I'm saying that facetiously because it's about to rain and storm here. So we might cut out, be blurry, but I don't care. We're going to keep the show going. But again, thank you so much for being here. Founders Focus, where we're going to focus on founders. Imagine that. Founders Focus. We're going to be focusing on the founders, small business, medium-sized business owners, and the struggles that you go through, tangible takeaways, and what you can utilize right away to go and improve your business, to go and improve your life, to go and improve your team's life, and create the life that you want. We want to make business success simple for you so you can live extraordinary. Really quickly, before we dive into the good stuff, today we're going to be focusing on and kind of answering the question, what are business foundations? We talk about business foundations all the time, and it probably means something a little bit different to everybody. I think there was a book that said business foundations. It's a little bit older. I didn't know it existed, but we're going to give you our version of business foundations and the things that we focus on with our clients and the things that we focus on in our own business that have made them successful and what we're making our clients successful. But first, a few announcements. If you haven't yet, I say this at the beginning of every show, every podcast that we do, sign up for the Young Professional Leadership Summit. We are going full steam ahead with this event. And actually, we're getting pretty close to being full, I believe, for in-person tickets. So if you haven't yet, get your tickets. They can go to yplsummit.com. That is yplsummit.com to get your tickets. They are priced for anybody who is anywhere, doesn't matter where you are in your leadership or business journey. For in-person tickets, I believe it's only $60. And if you're from the States, it's even better because the dollar right now sucks because it's priced in Canadian, $60 Canadian. If you want to do virtual, it's $20 Canadian. And yeah, go to yplsummit.com, get your tickets. We have some amazing guests, guest speakers, amazing content. We're really refining the outcome that we're trying to create and the outcome that we're going to create for a lot of the people who are going to be there. And we're very excited about it. So get your tickets. The other thing is our other shows that we have. So remember, Thursday, we have our Summit Success Series. That is every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we switched it to the same time as this one. Actually, no, we moved this one back to be the same time as the other one. And then every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, we have our Summit Coffee Club. That one, you get to kick back and relax a little bit. Running a business, being a high performer is already stressful and tiresome enough. We don't need to be serious all the time. So kick back with us. So we have some fun with some amazing guests, get some actionable takeaways. We'll kind of flex some creative juices. And if some of you have seen those games and challenges that we have on those shows with our guests that we play, they really help you be creative, think of things outside the box, and have a little bit of fun while we're doing it. But today, we're going to be focusing on answering the question, what are business foundations? Why are they so important? And why are they the thing holding a lot of business owners back, a lot of founders back? And we're going to answer a lot of those questions with my amazing partner, Audrina.
Hello. Good. Happy to be here.
Lady of few words. No, it's good.
You know that. Come on.
I would say, yeah, I know. I would say good to have you, but it is good to have you, but you're here. You're your mainstay.
I'm always around.
You're a co-founder of Summit Chasers Network. So no, I'm happy. Anytime that we get to do some content together is always a lot of fun. And we're getting more and more comfortable with doing content together, which I don't know is a good thing. But I think it's fun for people watching and listening.
I think so.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what your answer was going to be there, but I'm glad that you agreed.
No. I enjoy shooting it. I would say shooting the shit. Am I allowed to say that? I guess it's our live. I enjoy shooting the shit with you. And at the same time, like being able to talk about business and add that value in there. So it's always a good time.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. And yes, we're going to answer the question today. And we talk about like what these business foundations are, and they're all over our website and what we do and how we help our clients. So we want to kind of be able to really define what those are and go through some of the pillars, what we call our Summit Success pillars, what those really are, and what are some that are maybe not focused on, or some of the most common ones that are missing. And one of the most important ones, and I think it's going to be something, the most important one might surprise some people. also not surprise some people, but I think it'll surprise how in depth
Mhm.
this pillar is, and how much of a negative impact not focusing on it can really be. And it's not the easiest one to focus on either. And we'll answer why that is here in a second. But let's answer the question. What are business foundations? So we have our Summit Success Framework, and we got so excited when we were building Summit Chasers, and we were putting all of our knowledge that we had together and creating the platform and creating the framework. You and I got so excited when
Yeah.
we were able to figure it out. So the acronym was Summit, and I thought for sure it was gonna like we were gonna deviate from it. We're gonna have to change this. This is too like fluffy or whatever it is. But it's actually the more we've refined it, the more cemented this framework has been. The more clients that we work with,
Yeah.
the more people that we bring on our team. We have some amazing people on our team right now who've done incredible things. And this, the more and more, like I said, cemented and foundational this framework has really become. Would you agree?
100%. I actually like vividly remember when we sat there and came up with this acronym and like bouncing back and forth about like, wait, what should make a clock be? What should map your path be? And then figuring it out was just exciting. But then also, like you said, it's continued to be cemented in the work that we've done with people
Mhm.
that it is that focused on business foundations. And this kind of is all encompassing in that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been a wild ride because one of the reasons that we really built them out so I think we were so careful when we were building them out to start is because we initially wanted to do a course, which
Mhm.
we realized it's not authentic. We'd have to change it all the time, which
Yeah.
is fine. We should be improving it all the time, but we wanted it to be more how we want to be more, I think, specific with how we were working with our
Right.
clients to be able to provide more and more value. But I think the exercise of us building the course based on this framework really helped create that foundation of
Yeah.
why it's still here and why it is so strong and why it's working with a lot of our clients. And if you watched, I think was it last week yeah, I think it was last week we broke down the case study of a couple of our clients and how we utilized some of this. So
Yeah.
go to our YouTube channel if you weren't here last week. Go to our YouTube channel and go to last week's live Founders Focus live, and we break down a case study, like literally how we did this step by step with
Yeah.
utilized some of this, anyways, with one of our clients, and we actually, I think in the first 3 or 4 months, they 3x their revenue. So it works,
Mhm.
and it works with bigger companies as well. So we're very excited to be able to dive a little bit deeper into this. But we're going to start with the most important one, which is start with you, right? So founders will come to us and we'll break down kind of, okay, here's the strategy, here's the outcome that we're going to try to create for you, or we're going to create for you. Here's kind of the layout of, the bells and whistles of what we're going to be doing. We have our internal recruiter, we have Christy who focuses on org structure and that kind of stuff, and we focus on leadership and strategy development. And they're like, okay, well, where should I start? And every time it's like the one place you probably don't want to start with
Yeah.
you, big time, because the founder is always the ceiling that the business cannot scale past, right? And well, I'll let you kind of take it from here. Why is that?
So, I mean, first things here, I think these, oh, I disappeared. I'm back.
You're back.
I would say, yeah, the first thing that kind of gets in the way sometimes are some of our biases. So that could be based on our expertise, our zone of genius. It could be based on things that we're incredibly passionate about. They could be based on past experiences or even our environment. And I think a lot of times we don't even realize that we have these biases and that they could be holding us back. So being able to take a step back and speak to us outside, get that outside perspective, allows us to kind of shed some light on those things that are creeping into holding you back in your business, because it happens all the time in that founder role.
I like what you said about zone of genius. I've never heard you say that before, but that was genius, for lack of a better term. Are you
It's
able to
come up a few
expand on
times
that?
this week. Yeah. So I think if you are an expert in a specific area, typically we're going to kind of solve problems through that lens. So through your genius. So if we want to look at, say, you're a marketer, they're a lot more likely to see all of their business problems through a marketing lens,
Mhm.
really leaning into what they know the absolute most. So I think if we get stuck in that zone of genius, we aren't able to kind of take a step back and look at other things that could be tripping us up along the way, because it's what we know, it's what's true to us, it's how we've kind of like sparked all of the momentum that we initially saw. So I think that is where it's amazing to have it, and it's amazing to lean into it and continue to grow in it, but it can also trip you up along the way.
Yeah, no, big time. And actually, I'm going to bring this back up. So that really, so if you go down to define your role as a business owner, you'll see, and there's a lot of really successful founders and business owners where they eventually, as their business grows, they pull themselves out of that CEO role, and they do that because they clearly define the role. They took that introspective, the feedback, they've done the homework, they've worked with a company like us, shameless plug again, to really define what their role should be, what strengths do they have, what passions do they have, and where could they provide the most amount of value, the highest value, where they could focus their time on the highest value tasks and really clearly define their role. And sometimes that's not the CEO. Sometimes that's not COO. Sometimes it's just I always use your girl as an example.
I was just going to speak to that.
What was her
Yeah.
name?
So Chrissy Chella, she is
Right.
founder of Honor Active, and she, through a lot of, I think, introspection, realized that her role in her zone of genius was not within the CEO role, and that is where she was spending a lot of her time. And then I believe she shifted into head of campaigns or creative. I know it's along the creative aspect because that is what she loves to do. That is where she is in her genius. So I think being able to recognize that, it takes a lack of ego. You have to be able to step back and recognize where you might be better suited to bring somebody in. But it's through that process of defining your role, like you were talking about, that kind of comes to light.
Yeah, and I think, to our earlier point, founders do that too early. They focus on their crutch, their zone of genius too early, and they use it as that crutch. They use it as we did a talk about this when we were in Atlanta. We spoke with one of the Chamber of Commerce there, and we talked about founder biases, and one of them being the availability bias, where we are more likely to pull information and pull tactics and strategies based on what's most available to us. And if you're a marketer, in this case, we're saying marketer, or if you're somebody who's so passionate about your product and service, you're a master of it, that information, those tactics, those strategies, those fixes, even though they're not fixes, are most available to. So that's where you go. That's where you're comfortable. Right. And then you'll see too, where a lot of founders they start to veer. Okay, I know that I need to hire good people. I know that I need to focus on my systems and processes. I know I need to focus on X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. So I'm going to focus on this. And then they're not masters of it. It's difficult. And it doesn't solve the problem right away. Right. Or at least they don't see some sort of positive outcome right away. So they're like, I'm going to go over here where I have a more predictable outcome and I'm more comfortable over here. And that's where you see a lot of business owners. And again, we're going to spend a lot of time on the start with you, because that's where it starts. I mean, that's the most important aspect. You can't, if a founder or founders, I've worked with companies from smaller companies where you have two founders who are just starting out, they're 500,000 to $1 million, or companies who are co-founders and their companies at 60 to 100 million. Right. And they still have these biases that get in the way all the time. Right. Especially when things get stressful, especially when things are not going how they predicted, they veer back to these old biases and these old mental habits. Right. And you see, I mean, and the issue with this is you see a lot, especially when things are moving so fast right now, and a lot of founders, they get so head down and they get trapped in this box that they put themselves in, and whether this box was defined and created by their biases or their genius, or they have a love affair with their service or product, it's still a box that blinds them from seeing outside of it for the most part. And early on, they see this box as their competitive advantage. Or going back to the marketer, or whoever, somebody who's an expert in sales, marketing, whatever it is, they're an expert in their industry. Early on, they see this as their competitive advantage. And a lot of times it is their competitive advantage, especially, a lot of times that's how they found that early success. how they got to where they are. However, your competitive advantage is only as good as your ability to continue to leverage it over time and be able to leverage it long term. That means to continue to improve it and build the foundations and other structures to give that competitive advantage a platform to be utilized long term, to be utilized more abundantly by more people and more customers. Where if you continue to lean on it and that's all you focus on, and you just focus on the now, right? Just getting out of this, let's just survive right now. Let's just sell it to more people right now. And you don't build those platforms and that foundation underneath, it's going to fizzle out. It's not going to be your competitive advantage anymore. Other companies in your industry are going to pass by you, whether they have an inferior product, but they're changing other things. They're hiring better people. They're utilizing better softwares, all this type of stuff. They're going to pass you, right? So that early success is one thing that we say, like one of the biggest enemies to success is success itself. Because I'm just going to keep doing more of the same stuff. I'm just going to try harder. I'm just going to keep coming back to doing that same thing over and over again. Or again, that long term, that's going to hurt you, right? If you're not focusing on these other foundations, if you're not focusing on getting outside your box, challenging your biases, maybe admitting that you're wrong in some cases, or admitting that you don't know everything, or between you and your co-founder, you don't know everything, right? So let's pull this back up. What's another one? Yeah, that's what we said, like stuck in the day-to-day. That's a big one. It's just, you're so blinded, right? And then another one at the very bottom. Let's go to the bottom, everybody. Ability to lead and communicate clearly. Again, a lot of founders, you're coming from, when you make that switch from, I almost remove myself from the stage. When you make that switch from, okay, it's me and maybe 4 or 5 other people, and you have such a hands-on, you have so much ability to see, you're involved in the day-to-day, you know where everybody knows where each other's moving, you know what each other, you can finish each other's sentences and that kind of stuff. And then you move to hiring a bigger team. It's tough for a lot of founders to acquire and lead differently than how they led that first initial team, and especially acquiring new talent differently. Because sometimes, like that first 4 or 5, maybe more people, they've come within your network. Maybe you know them already. Maybe they've moved over from another company with you. Maybe they're your brother. Maybe they're a family member of somebody who is already on your team, whatever it is. So your ability to communicate is different. The skill that you're utilizing, the type of communication is different with that close-knit team. Now, when you start adding layers to your business, when those people, maybe they turn into managers and they have to start leading a team, maybe they have to expand their teams. Now you're leading leaders. Or maybe those people aren't ready yet to be a leader. So you have to hire somebody in over top of them. How do you communicate that? How do you have that conversation? How do you go and hire people? How can you get kind of get out of the way of your own biases and maybe mental blocks? Fear really is the biggest one. Your fear, and go hire somebody who's not in your immediate network, somebody who you don't immediately know the track record of because you know their cousin's brother, if you worked with them somewhere else for years beforehand. So it's getting over a lot of those fears, really, because when you start a business, it's not that you're scared of the unknown. When you start a business, everything's unknown. Like, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know if I'm going to get a paycheck. I don't know any of this kind of stuff. But then once that business starts getting traction, you found some success, maybe you've been in business 5, 10 years, right? But you want a different type of success. You want something different. You get more scared of losing what you've created than gaining what you want. So then making those decisions that are different from the ones that got you to where you are scary. They're really, really scary. So now all of a sudden you are scared of the unknown, right? You've lost that, that fearless startup mentality, which is in a lot of is good, right? Because now you have people who work for you that you're responsible for, and you have clients that that you want to serve and that kind of stuff. You have a reputation, so you do have more to lose, but it's that getting over, I just don't want to lose what I have, so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And even if you're just like, and a lot of the objection to that is, I don't want to grow. I just want the same business I've been having. I just want to keep, I'm good where I'm at, that kind of stuff. Well, I'm sorry, you still have to keep improving. You still have to keep doing something different because the world keeps moving. You might want to stay in the same place, but the world keeps moving, right? No matter what, if you want to stay where you're at, you have competitors. Your competitors are going to start doing something different. Your competitors are going to start utilizing different technologies. They're going to find better ways to hire people. to hire better people, or hire, more other A players for them. Their products are going to improve, right? So even if you want to stay, let's say you want to stay status quo, you're at $2 million a year, and that's all you want to do. You want to do $2 million a year, and you're fine with that. It gives you a good life. You work with great people. You still have to keep improving because the world's moving, right? And in order that you keep having to do different things, you have to pay attention to what's going on. You have to be willing to make adjustments and pivot, and that's scary. That's scary for a lot. We have to get over those and identify, be aware of them, what some of those mental habits, those mental blocks that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add?
I would love, actually, if you would pull the slide back up, because I would love to hear from anybody who is listening in. Out of these things that we've talked about, what do you feel like you need to focus on the most? So out of all of those things that we're bringing up, the biases, your current skill set, being stuck in the day-to-day, what is the one thing that you feel like you need to overcome the most?
Or even something that maybe you have overcome that's made the biggest difference for you. And that's the one thing I like about the foundations that and these pillars and foundations that we've created, is they translate so much to your personal life too.
They do.
I actually just did a post today on LinkedIn about how there shouldn't be that much, especially as a founder or business owner, there shouldn't be that much separation between the two. There shouldn't be that much of a difference. Like the values of your business shouldn't be that far off your personal values, and the principles shouldn't be that far off your principles in your I'm gonna say real life. It's all real life, but in your personal life.
Yeah, right? Which is the perfect segue for our next pillar.
Ooh, there we go. Which is a unified team. So unify your team around a collective vision or mission. Now, vision. This stuff has been tossed around a lot, and I think in some places that it has been tossed around, it's very fluffy and not super tangible. So I'm gonna let you start this one.
Okay. Yeah, I do agree that it's often looked at as being fluffy, but I disagree with the fact that it is, because I think that they are absolutely vital to having a company that people are bought into. So when you are establishing your mission, your business should be bigger than just making money. So taking the time to actually determine what your vision is for your business and what mission you're on, what it is, the impact that you want to make, how you want to help people, whatever it might be, what your product is going to be used for. It has to be bigger than making money, because you need not only your team to be bought in to what you're doing, but also the people that you're serving to be bought in. And that if you have that really clear mission and vision, it allows people to do so a lot more easily. To add to that part.
To the core value.
I mean, I can speak to the core values too. Is there anything that you want to add to vision or mission?
No, I don't. I think you did it. I think you did it perfectly. It's there's just so many businesses that don't have it clearly. I think they start out having it clearly defined, the reason that they got into business and why they created their business, and at the start because they're excited about it. But then somewhere they just start veering off. They get into survival mode, or they get into shiny object. They fall for the shiny object syndrome, and then it just kind of veers them in different directions. And especially if you're working with a team who's been there from the beginning, or you have a co-founder, it can cause a lot of stress. It can cause a lot of dissension, but also it's just not. If you lose your purpose, if you lose sight of why you started this to begin with, I mean, it can affect like your own psyche. Like you're not going to be as willing to make the changes. You're not going to be as willing to ask yourself these tough introspective questions. You're just less likely to do the things you need to do to create the success that you want if you're not super clear and constantly, even reminding yourself what those vision and missions are, and then asking yourself, are we still on course? Are we still on the right path? Is everybody still really, really clear on this? Is it constantly communicated? So no, that's perfect.
I think that's the key though, what you just said. Like, it's one thing to just say, this is our mission, this is our vision. It's another to actually live by that and use it as that path and that North Star, if you will, that's keeping you on track, and that you can always reference back to, of like, are the hiring moves that I'm making aligned with my mission and my vision? Is is our product development, is our service development aligned with our mission and vision, and just kind of constantly checking yourself against that reference point. And I do think it's okay for the mission and vision to adapt as you get clearer, especially if you're in the earlier phase. It's okay for that to adapt. But once you get it solidified and you feel really good about it, you want to use that as a point of reference for you.
Yeah.
I love
Backtrack
that.
a little bit here, Kristen. My biggest aha moment has been self-awareness. That is a big one for a lot of people. A lot of
Yeah.
people. I have put myself in my own bias box. I like that. And decrease, not that you did it, I like how you said it. And decrease my opportunities by telling myself they aren't possible, opening my eyes with self-awareness of what is possible, and setting boundaries with myself has been life-changing. I like that, setting boundaries with yourself
Yeah.
part two. Like, not being aware, not letting yourself veer down the wrong path, and kind of setting those boundaries of what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what habits, again, what kind of mental or mindset pushes you down the right path, and which ones push you down, away from your goals and that kind of stuff. So that's big. And the awareness piece is huge. The awareness piece is huge. And that's the first step with making any kind of change, is you have to be aware of what it is first, right?
Yeah.
You have to be aware and have to understand when to catch yourself when you're doing it. Like if you're on a diet, right? Simple example. If you're on a diet, you're laughing because you have the worst sweet tooth ever. But if you're on a diet, right, and you know that if you go down certain aisles in the grocery store, right, and you're aware of it, you can stop yourself from going to that part of the grocery store, and you can go, then you implement a strategy and you stay on the outside of the grocery store. And that was a really simple example, but there's a million examples of that. But awareness is always the first step. Always the first step. All right, you want to move on to values?
I do. So core values, everybody loves this term, don't they? I think
It's
such a
buzzword.
Oh my God, it's such a buzzword. And I think that can at times do it a disservice. Like it's in our foundations for a very, very solid reason. But they have to be done properly. So I think core values, like they're not just a bunch of really cool sounding buzzwords that you're going to use within your business to just slap on the walls or slap on your website. They have to be expectations and a way of being that should absolutely, for any reason whatsoever, not be pushed aside for either monetary or personal gain. And I think that is key to making core values be what they are and what they should be. And they should be embedded in your systems, in your service, in your product, in the way that you're communicating, the standards that you're upholding. Everyone has to be so clear on what you value in your business, whether they be the people that you're serving or the people that come into your team. And just similar to your mission being used as that like point of reference, your core values can also be used to make sure that you are either attracting or repelling the people that you do or do not want involved within your company. So it's so much more than just those words that we're going to just like tick the box, say, yep, we've got our core values in place. Like, no, they actually have to be lived and true to who you guys are. And they have to be seen and felt in every single aspect of communication, delivery, and I would say hiring and sourcing.
Yeah. Core values are the last thing you want to turn into a gimmick, right? Like there's a few examples of ours is over deliver. So when we work with our clients, obviously we have outcomes that we create and weekly to-dos that we do and that kind of stuff. But we don't let that stop us from doing a little bit extra, from making connections or doing extra one-on-ones with leadership teams and that kind of stuff. We're doing a little bit extra when it comes to documenting processes or hiring individuals for our clients, that kind of stuff. That's a big one. So we put that in our internal processes. We don't necessarily slap it in our marketing or on our website or anything like that. You can. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying that's not the focus of them. The focus is, okay, how can I follow through with this? How can we implement this in our systems, in our communication? Another one is grow or die. It's like with our team, like we're always pushing each other to improve, telling you, reading books, challenging each other on what kind of books we should be reading and suggesting that kind of stuff and pushing each other to improve, getting outside of each other's comfort zones.
I was going to say, like the comfortable side of things for sure is where we push each other.
So we have a few people on our team who are really uncomfortable on camera, and we were doing some marketing stuff yesterday, and they don't like doing it, and you can tell they're stiff when they're talking on camera, and they just don't like it. And so we got on StreamYard, And when you put people backstage, for those of you that haven't used StreamYard before, when you put people backstage, they can see you, but you can't necessarily see them. And you know that. So they would be main stage recording and doing this script, and we would be backstage watching them. And they're like, this is really uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to do this. It's like, well, if you're on stage, that's going to be uncomfortable. If you're doing lives, that's going to be uncomfortable. You're on podcasts, that's uncomfortable. Like, you got to get comfortable with that, with that type of environment. And, you know, when you're doing scripted stuff, you kind of have to, you almost have to be more silly, like be more, you know, like more like emphasize, more animated, that kind of stuff. So it was really uncomfortable. But we pushed them to do it, and they got way better at it just in that hour and a half we were doing it. So that's something that we push and we don't shy away from. Individuals that aren't up for that challenge, who don't want to be pushed and who don't want to consistently grow, they wouldn't do really well on the Summit Chasers team. It's just the way it is. And that's fine. But that's an example of core values being embedded in your processes, systems, and expectations. Right. So they're not fluff pieces. Right. So that was really, really well said. But the last one, so principles would be probably more specific, be like the specifics of your core values. So kind of like the ways that you make decisions, your expectations on handling issues, specific issues, expectations on, you know, what opportunities to focus on and ways of dealing with people. So one of our principles is we entice and we create an idea. We call it like an idea meritocracy, where everyone shares their feedback and ideas, and we work through them together. Right? We don't shut down any ideas. If you put your hand up, you have an idea on something. I don't care if it's not like your task or it's not your department or whatever it is. We hear you out. Right. And then we discuss it, and whether we use your idea or utilize your idea, that's up to the team collectively, you know, and we weigh it based on, you know, your experience and against other ideas. And, you know, we try to poke holes in it as much as we can, if there is any holes to poke into. But we don't want anybody to hold back any ideas, any opportunities to innovate and improve. And again, help us create what we're trying to create with Summit Chaser. So that would be like a principle. Right? Like, everybody puts their hands up. You don't hold back just because I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Right? No, you say it because we all want to push each other, and we all want to improve and be better and be able to provide an amazing experience for our clients and be able to do it with more clients. Right? And then another one would be like, when you're dealing with issues, first thing you want to do is distinguish the symptoms from the disease. So we try not to, like, never take an issue as face value. This is one thing that we say a lot in some of our lives, is you always solve every problem twice. Immediately, you solve the issue at hand, and then you come back and solve it again to make sure it doesn't come up again. So you find the root cause and solve for the root cause. So you don't just focus on the symptom, focus on the root cause. So those would be examples of principles. And there's tons of them. A great book to read if you want to learn more about principles would be Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a tough. Huh?
I said, who would have thought that that's what it would be called?
Yeah, called Principles. I think it's called Work Life Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a good book. It's a good book. But if you want to learn more about like the specifics of principles, we have more content on those as well. But that's an amazing resource as well as that book on the actual usage of principles and how principles, the idea of principles, and constantly creating new principles and improving upon your principles really helps. Again, it's that consistency when you're growing, right? Because then you have, again, ways of making decisions, ways of handling disagreements. You know, how do you handle employees that aren't aren't living up to their standards? How do you identify your standards, right? A lot of those are principles. And if you can create those principles and write them out, communicate them, and consistently enforce them, right? As you grow, you're much more likely to grow consistently. You're much more likely to attract the right people. You're much more likely to detract the wrong people, right? So that there's something that is constantly evolving, right? But you need to initially define them in order to even start that process, right? So that's one of the big things that we do. Then the biggest thing isn't just defining these things; it's taking action on them and being consistent, communicating them consistently. Right? because all these things, your vision and mission, your values and your principles, it's embedded in how you hire. It's your employer brand, your onboarding, your fulfillment, decision making, partnerships you choose, and you need your entire team to completely understand them and be completely bought into them and completely consistent with them, right? And it can be uncomfortable. We've worked with a couple of clients, and I've worked in a couple of companies where we would implement these things, and initially it's really uncomfortable. It's that short term, like, oh, this is almost cringy in some ways, or like this person's been here forever. They're not gonna do this. They're not gonna agree with this sort of thing. We have to decide, do you want to have this person hired on your team specifically, or do you want your business to be successful and you can hire or you can employ a whole bunch of individuals that would be more in line with what you're trying to achieve, that kind of stuff, right? And that's not to say you just get rid of them, right? There's lots of things you can do. You can help them find another job. You can vouch for them, whatever it is. But this is for founders and business owners who want to grow and create a long-lasting business. In order to do that, you need to make sure everybody on your team, at least the core people on your team, at the very least, the core people on your team are all pointed in the right direction, rowing in the same direction.
Yep.
Anything to add?
No, that was beautifully done. I do see
Beautifully
so.
done.
Awesome. Yeah.
Wow. I'll take it. So let's unify your team. Next foundation is map your path. So this is a fancy way of saying strategy. So now we have the vision and mission, we have the core values, we have the principles. Now, how do you actually achieve it? What does your company actually need to look like in order to achieve these things? And so much of this, and it drives me nuts, so much of this, and you see even a lot of, I'm not going to call any of them out, but you see a lot of these more popular like consulting firms, consulting agencies, when they focus on strategy, it's just a bunch of goal setting. It's just a bunch of rah, hey, we're going to hit this. What's your BHAG? And all that stuff's important. Yeah, you need to have, a clear direction on where you're going and what you want to achieve, so you know that you're on the right track. But that's not a strategy.
Right.
It's a wish list. Stretch goals. They confuse stretch goals with strategy, right? Yeah. And it's just not. And then you see this too much, where it's just a bunch of rah sentiments. And this is, I don't know when this started. There's studies, not studies, but I can't remember what book I was reading. There's a guy that did a study on this, on when this like success visualization mindset, I want to say cult, that wasn't the right word. Cult wasn't the right word. That's not the right word at all. Like chicken soup for the soul. I don't know. I've never
well, no, you're talking about like manifestation and just visualize things and it'll happen. And it's like, all good stuff. But
which is all good stuff. Do it. Yeah. Do it, because it helps you get through those times when it's more difficult. When you're not seeing these, the hockey stick effect, quite yet in your business, right? It helps you get through those things. You want to visualize, and it helps keep you on track, helps keep you focused, and that kind of stuff. But those things alone, they're not going to get you. They're not going to get you there, right? A strategy it's much more coherent. It's the how, it's the why, it's the where are we pointing the boat and how are we getting there, right? And it's just very impractical, right? They don't honestly identify and analyze obstacles, weaknesses, possible threats, without clearly and accurately, at least not clearly and accurately, right? And if you don't identify things, you're just going back to just being a stretch goal, or just a list of things that you wish would happen. A good strategy honestly acknowledges the challenges being faced, and creates or provides an approach to overcome them. So you're taking all those things into account. It's responsive to innovation and ambition. It creates the path and identifies the how, why, and where leadership and determination needs to be pointed and applied. It's not, again, it drives me nuts. I'm very passionate about this, clearly. But it needs to come from, but the first thing you need to do with a good strategy is, okay, what's our strengths? What's our weaknesses? How can we leverage our strengths either against competition weaknesses or opportunities in the market, or opportunities in the economy, or opportunities in our industry? How can we leverage our strength against these things to achieve this specific goal? Because again, if you don't have that goal clearly defined, you're going to veer all over the place, right? So these strengths need to be leveraged into the direction of the vision and mission. And then you need coherent, actionable steps to achieve this leverage, to achieve these goals, these broken down goals, right? And how do you mitigate your weaknesses? What threats do we need to avoid? And like, it all has to take all those things into account, right? And that's where we kind of created the, the key strategic objectives, where we see, okay, what exactly does your business need to look like? So one of the things, this is where our partner, she is a great partner, Chrissy, she really focuses on with us and our clients, is the org structure, right? She was a strategic growth HR partner for strategic growth for a lot of companies, Yahoo, Snapchat, a lot of big companies, right? So she has a lot of experience in this. But what does your company need to look like, tangibly need to look like, in order to accomplish these goals?
Yeah.
Again, you can, okay, we want $500 million of revenue next year or in 5 years from now. Cool. What does your company actually even need to look like? What kind of markets do you need to be in? What departments do you need to have built out? What type of supportive staff do you need? What type of supportive structures and processes do you need? How many staff, like how much staff is that even, like what does that even look like, right? And then how do you scale from there appropriately? A lot of them don't take that stuff into account. Then they have nothing to really work backwards from. They have no expectations. Then they fall back into, let's just visualize, set some great goals, and just keep doing what we're doing. No, a strategy is a coherent action plan that pushes away from the status quo and into a higher level of achievement, right? And that's really where that kind of that map your path foundation comes in, is understanding exactly where you're going and how to get there. Anything to add?
No, you covered absolutely everything.
Oh, I hate it when that happens. No, and it'd be interesting to see like some feedback on if anybody else had that realization of like, oh no,
goal setting versus strategy.
Yeah, like the goal setting versus strategy. Like, oh, I've just been writing out a wish list every quarter with my team of like, this is where we want to do. We're gonna try harder, and if they can do it, we can do it. Like it's just not it, right? And then that's when I will say that is the most fun aspect for me when we work with our clients, is coming up with that strategy and identifying the strengths, weaknesses, and how do we utilize it in order, like how do we utilize that? How do we leverage their strengths against opportunities and the competition, that kind of stuff. Like it's so much fun. But next one, make a clock. Things get a little bit more standard from now, literally, like it says standard operating procedures. But I'll let you take over this one.
Sure. So I feel like we had a bit of the fluff. So people say, now we've got a bit of the boring. This is usually the one that people are like, oh, do I really have to do this? Yes, you do. This is so key. So what Make a Clock is we're essentially wanting your business to run like a clock without you having to sit there and twist the dials and move the hands and do all the things manually. I'm not the analogy one, by the way. Zach is. So bear with me on that one. But I will say, like, having those standard operating procedures is so key. You have to get the value out of your head and into your business, rather than just word of mouth telling everybody what they should or should not be doing. So creating those things is huge. Then we've got the training and onboarding piece. You have to have solid training processes, onboarding processes, to be able to reduce the ramp up time of new hires, to make sure that your team is consistently performing at a higher baseline. And they can do that if they have trainings in place and they understand their role in and out. They have creative, like they can work a little bit creatively too within the realm of what it is they do. Throw that slide up for me one more time.
Well, there was one thing that you said in there that this is an objection with when we work with clients to standardize their operating procedures, is they say, well, we want everybody to be creative, so we don't want them to be reading from a script all the time as far as like what buttons to press and all this kind of stuff. I hear you, and this does the exact opposite. If they're menial tasks and their administrative tasks and the things that are consistent every time, right? There's always, in every role, there's things that they do consistently, whether it's daily or weekly. If they don't have to think about those things, if they're systemized, and if they're just following a script on those things, that will free up bandwidth for them to then be more creative with their more creative tasks.
Yeah.
Right. So it actually allows them to be more creative. Right. They're less stressed. They don't have to remember as many steps. They're not stressed about missing steps.
Yeah.
They can just do those things on autopilot almost. Right. Or you can automate them and systemize them. Right. A lot of them you can these days. So again, it frees them up. They can be more creative. They can spend their bandwidth and energy somewhere else. So.
Yep. And then, so with continued improvement principles, on top of having everything documented, you do have to build in continuous improvement, because you don't want to just leave things as they are. So having those benchmarks along the way to revisit some of the processes that you have in place is really, really key to allowing your business to continue to move with the times. Maybe there's new technology that's come out that you can now build into your processes to make them that much more effective, but without actively, or I would say intentionally, setting aside the time to revisit things, then you're just going to get stuck where you're at and you won't be improving. So you've got to build those things in so that you can continue to grow. Your company can continue to innovate and do all of those improvements.
Yeah.
Zach, do you want to speak to this last one?
Go ahead. Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, that's another example of the principles that we were talking about, right? And the principle for us is understanding that any process we currently have in place isn't as good as it's ever going to be. So it always can be improved, right? And even if it's kind of, there's a saying where, if you're not afraid, you should be afraid, or if you're not at the ready, you should be at the ready, or something like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but the idea is that if everything's going really well and you're not focused on like improving anything, and you're not afraid, you're just letting things kind of go, right? That should be a scary place for you, because that means you're not paying attention to things, you're not improving, you're not getting ahead of threats, you're not getting ahead of potentially taking advantage of opportunities, right? So everything should always have, a means to be improved at some point.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was kicking it over to you to talk about innovation processes.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, no, innovation processes. So this is that idea of, it's almost like a startup mentality, like have a startup mentality, right? So these innovation processes are really, especially if really it's any type of business. If you're a service or a product based or a mix of both, you should always have and always take feedback from your consumer, from your clients, right? From your customers, and constantly look to improve. So you should always have these little innovation processes or these little micro experiments going on. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in anymore. There's so much technology out there that's moving so quickly. That's whether it's enablement technology. So I had an objection to this concept the other day in the construction industry, because a lot of the construction industry, it's just, there's not necessarily technology that helps you build a house faster or more efficiently. I mean, there is, but for the most part, that technology is not moving as fast as maybe in some other industries. But the enablement technology is how they're acquiring clients, how they're doing their marketing, how they're communicating. Shout out to our friend Ron Nussbaum, how they're communicating and managing their projects. That stuff is improving so quickly. So it's even more important for a lot of these previously classically environment industries, like the construction industry or real estate industry, to constantly look at ways to improve how they're doing it and to systematize it. Because if you don't, you're just going to start looking to fix things after they break, which a lot of times is too late. Because again, things move so fast. If you wait for something to break before you fix it, the competition's probably already going to pass you, right? Or at least catch up with you, right? Or you're going to miss a lot of opportunities, right? So you constantly have to be putting in like these little micro experimental processes and systems to getting that feedback from your clients, to getting the feedback from the customers, to testing things out, to trying new things. And a lot of this can be done with creating, I don't want to get too into the weeds right now, but you can create little but you can create little like innovation or experimental teams, right? To try out these new things and to get feedback from the market and test these things, right? Like new CRM softwares or new marketing outreach softwares or whatever it is, right? AI, everything, whatever, customer service, project management tools, constantly testing these things out and getting feedback. How can we improve? What can we focus on to improve? How can we decrease, answer times for, when customers have issues, or How can we decrease fulfillment times on some things? Like, you can always be improving these things. So creating those innovative processes is huge, for our, like, the Make a Clock foundation. Let's go to the, you ready for the last one?
I'm ready.
You ready? This is probably the most important one. And I say that because if
Outside of
you,
start with you.
outside of start with you, this is probably the next most important. Yeah, outside of start with you. If you're looking at a business from, a 30,000 foot view, and this is really any business, a successful business is made up of really two concepts, and that's people and culture. Right. And a lot of people will argue with that. Well, it's about the product, or it's about the technology that you use, or it's like how you leverage blah against blah, or whatever. But again, all that stuff is useless if you don't have the right people executing on it. Right. And then your culture, you won't be sustaining your culture if you don't have the right people. And again, these kind of play with each other. You attract the right people by having the right culture, and you retain the right culture by having the right people. So this aspect is super, super important. And what we try to do with this one is get away from a lot of businesses, what a lot of businesses fall into, which is kind of that warm body syndrome,
Yeah.
where they just see hiring as like this thing that they have to do, especially when they get to a certain size. You get to like 20, 25, 30 people on your team, all of a sudden, you don't want to admit it, but people start turning into numbers. They just start turning into tasks that you need them to do on a day-to-day. And what can happen is you stop focusing on the quality, not just the quality of the people, but also the quality of the roles that you're fulfilling in. Are the roles that you're even hiring for in line with the strategy that you're trying to implement? But you'll realize really quickly that you don't need to hire as many people if you have a dense talent pool, right? And you'll be a lot more efficient, and you'll attract more of the right people. You have people banging on your door to come in to work for you. So do you want to start with this one?
Sure. I want to actually, before I dive into some of this stuff, just mention that what you said, I think, is really important around, and something that I think that we actively work to avoid is people just becoming numbers. Like, in order to have that solid culture, you need to recognize that they are human beings with a life outside of work, and understanding what makes them tick and what they value, and showing them that you are invested in them and their development will allow them to feel so much more connected with you and your business, and you'll be able to get the most out of them. So I think that's another thing that we are actively working to keep from happening, I think, within our clients, is viewing their people as numbers, because I think it's detrimental to the culture typically.
Yeah.
So to dive in, sorry.
Well, no, I was gonna kind of, that's a good segue into this one. And a way to avoid that is to get really, really clear on the roles that you're creating and hiring for. That's why the first one up there is role mapping. And this isn't just your role as the founder, like defining your role as the founder. What should you be focusing on and what should you not be focusing on? But also, let's say you're hiring for, your first hire, your first sales manager or whatever it is, like your first key role, really clearly defining what is the outcome that this role needs to create for a business that's in line with our strategy. Like, really clearly define that, because if you really clearly define the outcome it's trying to create, what their day-to-day looks like, what the expectations are, what the skills that they need, what the characteristics and attributes that this individual needs to be successful in this role becomes really, really clearly. So then you become so much more efficient at hiring for these roles, and what these roles, again, what these roles really are.
Yeah.
So then as you grow, and if you do this with especially like your main key roles, if you do this early on, you get really, really efficient on the people that you're hiring. Therefore, you don't hire people to do half roles. And that's what you see a lot of business owners, a lot of founders. What happens with them, especially when they start hiring, again, they get into like their 20th, 30th, 50th role that they're hiring for. They just start hiring people in. You're like, okay, I need a salesperson. Okay, cool. You hire for the salesperson when really you only need somebody to do outreach. So that's only like really half a role. Yeah. Right. So you start getting too many people doing half roles, half, even sometimes less than half tasks during the day. And then this becomes more and more inefficient. And then if you have a core value, or you have principles, where we constantly push each other, we're always growing and that kind of stuff. Well, how can you push people when they're just doing like half roles, half their day is spent twiddling their thumbs, and they're not being pushed to grow. They're not having to stretch themselves. They're not having to really to fight to meet expectations and that kind of thing. And I mean that positively. But that's a big trap that a lot of founders fall into, a lot of business owners fall into. Dead silence. Keep
I
going.
know. Well, I feel like you kind of touched on the hiring process. The hiring process becomes a lot easier once you've done that role mapping. So another thing that we'll focus in on is actually like interview structure and how are you sourcing people, making sure that you are getting the best people into that pool of candidates that's going to be the most aligned with you, your vision, your core values, your principles, all of those things, and to fulfill that role. So that is a huge focus. Do you want to add anything to hiring?
No, that is we have an amazing internal recruiter that helps
Mhm.
work with our clients on that, Joe, and
Yep.
he's really, really clear on, again, what the steps are that will increase, because you can't. We're dealing with people here. It's never going to be 100%. Like
Mhm.
every once in a while, if you could have the most perfect hiring process, but every once in a while, somebody will get through, or it just won't be a really good fit, or the business will pivot and it won't work out. It's just the way it is. But doing as much as possible to increase the chances that that hire works out and stays with you for a long period of time is really, it's the key to a successful hiring process, right? And
Yeah.
we did a part one of our talent density last week, I believe, for the Summit Success Series, and then we had Joe on the Summit Success Series 2 weeks ago, and then the week after that we had Junaid Iqbal, who owns nodegree.com, which is a great recruiting company. When we spoke with him on some of the ins and outs and tactics when you're hiring and sourcing for top people. So I would go back and check those for sure.
We just had a question come through from Kristen. Looks like, how do you set the goals and expectations from the beginning with such broad vision and values? Zach, take
Ooh,
that away.
that's a really good question. So when right from the beginning, when you have such a broad vision and values, first of all, if you have a really broad vision, you need to narrow your
Mhm.
vision, right? You need to narrow it down and get as specific as you can with it, right? And what is the outcome that I want my business to create, right? And I'm assuming that if we're talking about, again, this is really delayed in some cases, so we're going to assume
Yeah.
that you're talking about defining the role and setting goals and expectations. But you need to get really, you don't need to be as specific when you're defining the outcome that a role needs to create, right? You don't, I need this role, I need to hire this person because I need to take these tasks off my plate so that I can go and focus on the highest value tasks here, right? And then so you really define what that role needs, what the outcome of that role really is. And it's I need to free up 20 hours a week of my time, and I need them to be able to reach out and continue relationships with these vendors or whatever it is, right? So you can really, really clearly define what the outcome of that role is, and then you can set expectations around there. And if you're early on, you and this first individual, that's going to be part of the characteristics and attributes that you need to look for. Is I need somebody who's been in roles that change often, who's been
Yep.
in roles, maybe in earlier onset companies. I need somebody who can pivot really quickly and is a creative forward thinker, right? So you can really clearly define the role and the attributes needed at that point too, right? Would you add anything to that? I'm hoping that you're talking about because again, it's delayed. I'm hoping that she's talking about hiring and talent density.
No, I think you covered that one, and I know I'm hoping the same thing
Yeah.
about what she's referring to. Okay, moving us on to leadership development, and I'm going to lump both of those together. They are separate, but the development aspect I think remains the same. So as you continue to grow and scale, leadership development is huge. Um, Oftentimes, what I think many clients have experienced, many leaders that I've spoken to have experienced, myself included, you throw people into leadership roles before they are ready and you expect them to just figure it out. And we want to keep that from happening with Summit Chasers. So we will actively work with the founders to help them develop their leaders, to set their leaders up for success so that everything is in line as far as your mission, your vision, your values. But then how do your leaders have one-on-ones with their team members? How do they deliver feedback? How do they create goals that are going to excite their team? So having all of that input, I think, is really, really key in just making sure that you develop a solid leadership team. And then let me just speak to people. And then, Zach, I'm going to kick it to you to add to those. People development is huge. And I think that comes from having solid leadership. Because if your leadership understands the value of developing the people on their team, your people are naturally going to start to grow. But I think having career mapping paths and having skill development for people, letting them know, like I spoke to at the beginning of this increasing talent density portion, if people know that you are invested in them and their personal growth, they will go 10 times further for you and your business. It's just what I've experienced time and time again. And I think just something that's really important to keep in mind. And like Zach said, people and culture is the two lifelines of a business. So if you pour into your people, they'll pour into you.
Mm. No, I think that was great. No, leadership development is, and this is another term that it gets thrown around, I think,
All the
way
time.
too much. And it's
Yeah.
almost way, like we were just on LinkedIn before we went live, and somebody, those memes or whatever, where they're holding up a whiteboard and they write stuff on it and whatever. I'm not going to say what it said, but it was so fluffy
I feel like you could say what
and
it said.
so intangible. I don't remember what did it say. It
It
said
was,
leadership. Go ahead.
no, you started off and I'll fill in the blank.
Leadership isn't about what you do, or it's about how you make people feel.
Yeah, that was it. That was the last part anyway that
Yeah,
stuck out.
so
Like,
yeah, that was the last part at least. It was like it's about how you make people feel, which is like, okay, sure. However,
and
there's so much more to being a successful leader. Like, yeah, okay, I can make people feel great, cool. Did you create the outcome?
exactly, yeah.
And again, we're talking to mostly business owners right now, right? We're not talking to. I mean, if you're leading if you're leading like a daycare, like, sure, right? You want the kids to feel safe and good and happy and fun and that kind of stuff. But if you're leading a company, a business, you're a business owner, or maybe you're a number two in a business, right? You need to create an outcome, right? And if you don't, that's the difference between the business succeeding and the business failing. So leadership development isn't just, can I make people feel good, right?
Right.
Can I develop them? Like, that's obviously, it's a huge part of it. Developing people is
Big
a
part of it,
huge
yeah.
part of leadership. Absolutely huge part of it. Can I develop them in line with the outcomes we need to create? Can I develop people in line with the strategy that's in place? Can I organize people in a way that leverages their strengths, mitigates their weaknesses against the goal and strategy? That's that's a big part of leadership, right? It's, can I take the tools and resources I have at hand and create the outcome that we need, right? And can I do it in a way that does that long term? Can I do that in a way that attracts the right people, pushes the wrong people away? Right? Can I do that in a way that develops people in the right direction? Can I do that in a way that that is in line with our values and principles? Right? Like I said, we have an idea meritocracy. So if you're a leader and you just want to be a dictator, right? We're gonna get these goals no matter freaking what. Everyone's staying late. I don't care. I'm gonna tell everybody what to do. That's that's not leading. That's dictating, right?
Yeah.
But facilitating the development, facilitating and organizing people in a way where they're going to accomplish the goal, right? And allowing them to give you feedback. That's a big thing with a leader: getting feedback yourself and being open to the feedback, hearing other people's ideas, taking people's ideas, allowing them to disagree, mediating, right? And then if needed to, being the final word, right? But allowing them to air out their ideas, allowing them to get their input in, allowing them to give you feedback. Like a lot of that is, that's leadership. And to develop those skills, develop that mindset, develop those mental habits is huge when we're talking about leadership development. But again, leadership development is just this, if you scroll through LinkedIn and these other places, is just so fluffy in a lot of cases, and it drives me nuts. So you should probably, anybody that's still listening, you should show up to the YP, the Young Professional Leadership Summit. You'll see a little bit more of what actual leadership.
That was so perfect.
Right. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. And then these people like this black and white statements of like what leadership really is, and then it's just so black and white. But it's not. It's leadership development leadership, successful leadership in general is very gray. It takes a lot of different moving parts. It takes a lot of different skills. It takes a lot of different pieces. And it also, what makes a leader successful over here will not make a leader successful over here. It's just one of those things. Right? It's not a black and white, and it's not meant to be fluffy. Although some of those posts sound cool and they get a lot of comments and likes and reposts and that kind of stuff, but they're useless in a lot of ways. Anyways, I'm gonna get in trouble if I keep talking.
Spice. He is bringing the spice.
Look, we're authentic here. We're honest. It is what it is. All right. But that leads right into people development. You should never hire somebody into the last role they'll ever have. You should hire people in that have the potential and set them up for success and set them up for the ability to move up. And be okay if it's not with you.
Yeah.
Be okay if they're not going to move up and to be a director or a partner in your own business. Right? Yeah. Set them up for success to wherever they're going, right? And be okay with that. Right. And that's, you have to, right? That was one of the concepts a mentor of mine years ago, drilled into my head. Like even when I had my fitness facilities and health and wellness facilities, and we were, when I was hiring coaches, when we had our online platform, it was like, you never think to hire somebody into the last role they'll ever have. Right. And that stuck with me for a really long time. And it's really been ingrained in a lot of the systems and processes that we develop ourselves and what we implement with our clients. So.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then the difference between coaching and training. What is the difference? That's a tough one. Everyone has a different take on that.
Yeah. So I'll kick us off and then you can take it away after that. So coaching versus training, to me, training is setting those SOPs, let's say. It's saying, hey, this is how you do the task. This is A to Z how it's completed. Coaching is asking the right questions, having them open their mind, get creative. And I think they're used in two different ways. So I think that there's a role for training when you're bringing somebody in or when they're transitioning into different workloads. Training is absolutely needed. Coaching or mentoring is equally as needed, but comes in a different aspect. So I think being able to separate the two and acknowledge that when you're coaching somebody, it's about developing their skills. Maybe it's the soft skills rather than specifically, this is how you do a task, but leaning into each of those when appropriate. And I think coaching is more impactful on skill development and growth rather than training is just, this is how you get this done A to Z. That's my 10 cents on it.
No, the only thing I'll add to that is training is knowing what buttons to push. Coaching is knowing when not to push the buttons. Right?
I love that.
Training is specific. It's specific to a role. It's specific to it's specific to a task. Right? Yeah. Coaching it's beyond that. It's knowing to allow people. It's the kind of the how. It's the intricacies. Why is this happening? Creating their own. Almost like their subconscious, like training their subconscious or coaching their subconscious to make these decisions, without having to look at the textbook, right? And off of the, just experience, right? It's like a facilitating experience coaching is, right? So that's, that's perfect. So that, and then the T, we showed Summit. The last one's time to scale, which that's not really a foundation. That just means that the foundations are in place and let's freaking go. But this is an hour and 9 minutes. We were like, it'll be 45 minutes, half an hour.
So we really wanted to talking about business foundations. We can, obviously it's what we do. We can talk about it for a very, very, very long time.
And again, the one thing I love about the foundations that we've created and put in place, not create them, but the concept of it and how we package it, is that, again, I've said this before, I think is a lot of it directly correlates with life foundations, personal foundations, right? And it's weird seeing, again, I've just been a part of so many of these businesses, and before in my previous agency, I felt like, and this is what I've said before, I said on some podcasts and stuff, where I feel like we were handing out buoys and band-aids because we were just focusing on sales. We were doing sales coaching, sales playbook creation, and sales leadership development, that kind of stuff. But a lot of these companies would hire us like, we're falling short this quarter, or we had a bad year last year. So let's focus on the sales. So let's hire these people to like kick up our sales and that kind of stuff. But then when you really got into a lot of these businesses, and these are like big companies too. Like I worked at Hewlett Packard, EBB, Tamco. Like these are $1 billion+ companies. Like even them, they focus on the symptoms so much. We're falling short on revenue. Let's bump up the sales. When really it's because we would get in there and we work with some of their teams. We do a SWOT analysis, and everyone's doing different things. Everyone's rowing in different directions. Nobody feels like they're being led. Nobody, again, even the way they hire people, it's so just like the warm body syndrome, right? And a lot of these are like the root causes, right? The foundations, you improve the foundations, you will grow, you will improve as a byproduct, right? Your sales will improve, your retention will improve, your churn rate will improve, your employer brand will improve, your brand itself will improve, your perception will improve, and you'll be focused on the right things with the right people in place, consistently, long term, right? And again, it translates to life as well.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're watching the replay, give us some comments and follow along as if it was live. Pretend it was live and just comment along. Apologies for the people that were in the comments. This is so delayed. I'm going to see if I can figure out something that can improve the delay. So sorry, Kristen. I appreciate you sticking with us. I hope that I answered your question. If not, you can yell at me in private message if you want. Always welcome to. But we really appreciate everybody. Remember, for the Young Professional Leadership Summit, if you haven't got your tickets yet, yplsummit.com to get your tickets. It's yplsummit.com to get your tickets. Check us out. Come join us on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for the Summit Success Series. That one, we're focusing a lot on the mindset part, focusing on the start with you aspect of business foundations. I have some amazing guests on there, how you can overcome mental habits, identify and be aware, as Kristen said, be aware of some of the mental habits that you do have, the biases that you have that may be holding you back. And how do you push through those? How do you create new ones? And how do you become the person that can create the success that you and your business want? So thank you again, everybody. We really appreciate you. And until next time, keep chasing your next summit.